A year after the dictator-dominated United Nations declared war on ideologies such as anti-Muslim bigotry and opposition to mass immigration, the White House cooked up a fresh version of the Obama administration's national plot to supposedly prevent people from adopting unapproved ideologies. The controversial scheme aims to deploy community-based teams of mental health workers, teachers, law enforcers, social service employees, faith leaders, and others to supposedly stop the spread of ideologies that Obama claims can be dangerous or violent. Analysts and critics of the White House plan, though, warned that Obama's supposed attack on violent ideologies was in reality a thinly veiled assault on conservatives and political opponents of his agenda to fundamentally transform the United States. Indeed, almost from the start of his term, the Obama administration was remarkably candid in targeting conservatives, libertarians, patriots, veterans, pro-life activists, nationalists, and others as extremists and even potential terrorists. Various Obama bureaucracies disgorged a steady stream of propaganda painting hundreds of millions of mainstream Americans as the enemy merely for their religious or political views. News about the new 18-page plan was first reported by Reuters on October 19. It represents the first time the administration's policy for preventing violent extremism has been updated, the establishment-controlled media organ reported. The policy aims to prevent conversions to all violent ideologies, Reuters reporter Julia Edwards added, citing the document, which still does not appear to have been released publicly. It was not immediately clear what constitutional or statutory authority the White House imagines it possesses to police people's ideologies, or to hijack local governments to interfere in people's personal beliefs. According to Reuters, the White House strategy will be to unleash so-called intervention teams led by mental health professionals, faith-based groups, educators, and others as a resource for people who find themselves in such circumstances. These draconian intervention teams will then work to divert a person away from supposedly violent ideologies before they actually commit any violent acts or even any crimes. It is sort of like pre-crime, just more Orwellian and totalitarian. If targets of Obama's community-based intervention teams do not abandon the prohibited ideology through mental health and other interventions, law enforcement will be brought in to use more coercive measures. And if a person is believed to pose a threat or be capable of committing a crime, law enforcement action will be taken, the policy states. In other words, law enforcement action begins before a crime has even been committed, even before a target plots or conspires to commit a crime, which is of course already a crime in and of itself. Literally everyone is capable of committing a crime. The implications of the developments should be triggering alarm bells nationwide. The increasingly politicized and lawless Justice Department and Homeland Security Department also have a big role to play in the new plan, according to media reports. Among other schemes, they will be supercharging their ideological propaganda campaigns, using taxpayer funding to illegally promote Obama's ideology under the guise of countering ideologies Obama and the establishment disagree with and paint as violent. The two bureaucracies will enhance their social media campaigns to counter people being drawn to violence, Reuters claimed matter-of-factly, without adding any details on how federal propaganda efforts, prohibited under federal law, would prevent anyone from being drawn to unapproved ideologies. The scheme may be related to a new behavioral science program Obama unleashed that aims to nudge and manipulate Americans to support everything from the man-made global warming ideology and vaccines to big government and globalism. As the New American reported last year, in the interest of defeating allegedly extreme ideologies with better ideas, Obama touted some of his administration's policies at a UN summit announcing a global jihad against ideologies such as what the UN described as anti-Muslim bigotry in a press release. Among other schemes, he pointed to efforts to discredit ISIL's propaganda, especially online, an apparent reference to his recently unveiled Center for Strategic Counterterrorism Communications, a federal propaganda machine led by Muslim Brotherhood-linked Islamist Rashad Hussain. Under the new policy, federal prosecutors working for the increasingly radical DOJ will also put together after-school programs to shape children's ideologies. Other recently unveiled Obama extremism plans also call for conscripting school teachers to seek out students with unapproved ideologies and report them to Big Brother for further scrutiny. The warning signs the FBI told teachers to look for included non-approval of homosexuality, Islam, and more. The leaked FBI document also decried what it referred to as violent propaganda, suggesting an increasingly unhinged federal government now literally equates speech with violence. In other words, it appears that the federal government is now officially and openly waging all-out war on the God-given freedoms protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. These include free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and more. Some of the most fundamental liberties, indeed, freedoms that the government was actually created to protect. Unsurprisingly, Reuters and the administration both implied that the latest scheme was aimed at groups like the Islamic State, or ISIS. Yet, in reality, official Pentagon documents confirm that Obama knew Al-Qaeda was leading the revolution in Syria, supported it with weapons and money anyway, and outlined as a deliberate policy goal the establishment of an Islamist principality in eastern Syria, an Islamic State today known better as ISIS or Daesh. Meanwhile, the administration has been importing Muslims into the United States as fast as politically possible, and both ISIS and the U.S. government acknowledge that ISIS terrorists are among them. Thrown in among the myriad reported Islamic terror attacks purporting to justify the new White House scheme, San Bernardino, California, Orlando, Florida, and New York and New Jersey in 2015 and 2016, was the brutal terrorist attack on Christians in South Carolina. In that case, a drug-abusing National Socialist, Nazi, named Dylan Roof reportedly massacred churchgoers in Charleston. Incredibly, the Obama administration and the radical left have tried to paint the anti-Christian socialist-minded collectivist druggie as a conservative right-wing activist. Also unsurprisingly, Reuters dutifully played its role as propagandist for the establishment, outlining only establishment-approved criticism of the extremist White House plan. Instead of pointing out that the scheme is unconstitutional, dangerous, Orwellian, and ridiculous. For instance, Reuters quoted an alleged expert who complained only that the ideology program would be too focused on Islamists. Of course, with Muslim Brotherhood operatives across the Obama security apparatus, there is little risk of that happening. Instead, the real targets appear to be conservatives, Christians, libertarians, pro-life activists, and others who disagree with Obama's extreme ideology of fundamentally transforming America. Indeed, numerous federal documents confirm that to be the case. In 2013, for example, after Homeland Security was busted demonizing veterans and conservatives as potential terrorists, leaked documents showed the Obama Pentagon brainwashing U.S. troops to believe that Catholics, evangelical Christians, and Orthodox Jews were religious extremists like Islamic terror groups Al-Qaeda and Hamas. More recently, Obama's new terror czar openly announced a partnership with the ultra-left-wing hate group known as the Southern Poverty Law Center. In addition to bilking donors for hundreds of millions of dollars to enrich its leadership, that organization demonizes Christians and conservatives while praising cop-killing terrorists such as Bill Ayers, who bombed multiple U.S. targets and plotted with foreign dictatorships to intern and execute millions of anti-communist Americans. As the establishment's credibility increasingly implodes, just 6% of Americans really trust the establishment media today. Even mainstream voices and some of the most powerful figures in media have been exposing the Obama extremism for what it is. Talk radio giant Rush Limbaugh, for example, blasted the latest White House ideology program as a poorly disguised assault on conservatives and other people who disagree with Obama. What are violent ideologies and who gets to determine that? Who gets to define what is a violent ideology?" asked Limbaugh, whose weekly audience is estimated at almost 15 million listeners. "We know what this is." Now, you might think, wait a minute, Rush, some of that, San Bernardino, that's Islamic extremism. Yeah, but Obama's not worried about that. Orlando, that's the guy that blew up the gay bar, again, another Islamic no. Obama doesn't care about that. We know that the Department of Homeland Security in Obama's first term released internal documents warning of the dangers posed by violent right-wing groups. The talk radio giant continued, highlighting a widely ridiculed official document from Obama's Homeland Security bureaucracy telling local police that veterans, conservatives, constitutionalists, and other mainstream Americans are the nation's top terror threat. So you say, well, yeah, but Obama's leaving. It doesn't matter. The left runs everything in Washington no matter who the president is, and this work will continue. Concluding, Limbaugh pointed out that the real target of Obama's extreme plan is basically everyone to the right of Obama and his radical allies. "I think that there's no question that an ongoing effort to stamp out or intimidate anybody who happens to lean in any direction to the right is going to be undertaken, and I just wanted to mention this here at the top while everybody's attention is focused," he explained. Indeed, there is no need to speculate on what is going on here. Obama's actions and words have already made his agenda perfectly clear. In essence, the massive might of the federal government is being aimed squarely at voices that dissent from the increasingly dangerous extremism emanating from Washington, D.C. Americans of goodwill from across the political spectrum should unite to demand an immediate end to Obama's unconstitutional ideology.